They were never prepared to meet someone like you. And now it's breaking them. Pause for a moment and really feel that. Because this is not a coincidence. You didn't just stumble onto this message by accident. Out of all the videos, all the voices, all the noise in this world, somehow you're here, and deep down, something in your spirit is already whispering the truth. This is about you. God brought you here not because you're curious, but because you've been confused. You've been watching people shift around you. Energy changing, smiles turning forced, conversations feeling off. And you couldn't quite explain it. You tried to ignore it. You told yourself, maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's just in your head. But it's not. There's something different about you. Something rare. Something that doesn't need to be announced, because it's felt. And the moment you walk into a room, people sense it even if they don't understand it. Especially them. The ones who smile at you but feel unsettled. The ones who watch you closely but never truly support you. The ones who suddenly act distant, cold, or strangely competitive. You've noticed it, haven't you? And it doesn't make sense because you didn't do anything to them. You didn't try to outshine them. You didn't try to prove anything. You were just being you. But that's exactly the problem. Because what you carry, it exposes what they lack. And they were never prepared for that. You see, when God places something unique inside of a person, something pure, something powerful, something divinely protected, it doesn't just attract attention. It reveals truth. It brings hidden emotions to the surface. It stirs things in people they've been trying to suppress for years. Insecurity, comparison, jealousy, and suddenly, without warning, you become the mirror they never wanted to look into. That's why the energy feels so intense. That's why their reactions don't match your actions. That's why it feels like something deeper is happening. Something spiritual. Because it is. You are not just another face in the crowd. You were chosen to carry something that not everyone can handle being around. And when people who are not aligned with that encounter it doesn't inspire them. It disturbs them. And here's the part most people won't tell you. Jealousy isn't always loud. It doesn't always come with obvious hate or direct attacks. Sometimes it's subtle, silent, hidden behind fake kindness, passive distance, or unexplained tension. Sometimes it shows up as people pulling away for no clear reason. Sometimes it shows up as them downplaying your light. Sometimes it shows up as them trying to compete with something they don't even understand. But make no mistake, what they're feeling is real, and it's not because you did something wrong. It's because you are something different. You've been set apart in ways you're only beginning to understand. And that difference, that quiet strength, that inner light, that unexplainable presence, it's triggering something deep within them. Something they can't control, something they can't ignore. And the more you grow into who you truly are, the more intense it becomes. That's why you've been feeling this shift lately. That's why certain people are acting out of character. That's why things feel heavier, even when you're doing nothing but moving forward, because your presence is activating something, not just around you, but within them. And what's being activated isn't surface-level emotion. It's something buried, something spiritual, something tied to identity, purpose and truth. You're not imagining it. You're stepping into a level where your existence alone begins to challenge others, without you saying a word. And that kind of power, it was never meant to be understood by everyone, but it will be felt by everyone who crosses your path. And that's exactly why everything around you feels like it's shifting right now. They're not just reacting, something deeper is being triggered, and you need to understand why. Your presence alone exposes something inside them they were trying to hide. And that's the part that makes people uncomfortable around you, even when you've done nothing wrong. Because your presence isn't just physical. It's not just the way you look, or what you say, or how you carry yourself. It's deeper than that. It's something spiritual, something energetic, something that speaks before you even open your mouth. You walk into a room, and something shifts, not loudly, not dramatically, but subtly. Like a current moving beneath the surface. People feel it. They may not understand it. They may not even be aware of it consciously. But their spirit reacts, because what you carry has weight. It has truth. And truth has a way of making people uncomfortable when they've been living in anything less than that. That's why some people can't relax around you. They become awkward, overly defensive, or strangely quiet. It's not because you're intimidating. In the way the world defines intimidation, it's because your presence disrupts the version of themselves they've been pretending to be. You don't even have to say anything. You don't have to point out their flaws. You don't have to challenge them directly. You don't have to compete or prove your worth. Just by being who you are, you reveal what they've been trying to avoid. And that's where jealousy begins. Not from what you have on the outside, but from what you carry on the inside. Because there's something about you that feels real, grounded, aligned. And even if your life isn't perfect, even if you're still growing, still healing, still figuring things out, there's an authenticity in you that can't be faked. And people who are disconnected from that within themselves, they feel it instantly. It reminds them of what they've lost, what they've ignored, what they've buried deep beneath distractions, ego and fear. And instead of facing that truth, they project, they compare, they judge, they distance themselves. Because it's easier to label you as too much than to admit they feel not enough. That's why you've experienced those strange reactions that don't match your intentions. You've been kind, but met with coldness. You've been genuine, but met with suspicion. You've been supportive, but met with quiet resentment. And it leaves you wondering, why? Why does simply being yourself create tension? Why does your presence seem to trigger something in others? It's because your energy is different. You're not operating from the same place they are. While many people are moving through life on autopilot, seeking validation, approval, and temporary satisfaction, you're being guided by something deeper, a sense of purpose, a connection to something higher, a quiet awareness that there's more to this life than what's visible. And that difference, it creates a gap between how you see the world and how they do, a gap between how you carry yourself and how they feel inside, a gap between truth and illusion. And when that gap becomes too noticeable, It creates discomfort because deep down, they know you're not pretending. They know you're not playing the same games. They know you see things differently. And even if you never call it out, even if you stay silent, even if you remain humble and grounded, your very presence becomes a reminder of something they can't ignore, that they're out of alignment, that they're not being fully honest with themselves, that there's something within them that needs to change. And instead of embracing that realization, many people resist it. They turn that discomfort into jealousy, not because they hate you, but because they don't understand you, not because they want to harm you, but because your existence challenges them. And challenge, to someone who isn't ready, feels like a threat. That's why the reactions can feel so confusing, because on the surface, it looks personal. It feels like they're targeting you, like they have a problem with you specifically. But in reality, it's not about you in the way you think. It's about what you represent. You represent growth. To someone who's avoiding change, you represent truth. To someone living in denial, you represent light. To someone comfortable in darkness. And when those two energies meet, there's friction, there's resistance, there's a silent battle happening beneath the surface that has nothing to do with your actions and everything to do with your presence. So when you feel that tension, that unspoken discomfort, that strange shift in behavior, don't rush to shrink yourself. Don't dim your light to make others feel comfortable. Because what you carry was never meant to blend in. It was meant to reveal. It was meant to awaken. It was meant to separate what's real from what's not. And not everyone is ready for that. Not everyone wants to see what your presence brings to the surface. But that doesn't mean you're wrong. It means you're aligned with something deeper than what they can currently handle. And the more you step into that truth, the more clearly you'll begin to see what's really happening behind their reactions. Because this jealousy isn't just emotion. It's a signal, a reflection, a response to something far more powerful than they can explain. But this jealousy isn't random. It's coming from a place you haven't fully seen yet. You've been misunderstood your whole life, and now you know why. It didn't just start recently, did it? This feeling, this quiet distance between you and everyone else, it's been there for as long as you can remember, even when you were younger, even when you didn't have the words to explain it. You felt it, like you were there, but not fully seen. You tried to fit in. You tried to be like everyone else. You adjusted your tone, your personality, your reactions. You laughed when they laughed. You stayed quiet when something didn't feel right. You told yourself, maybe if I just blend in, things will feel normal. But they never did. Because deep down, you knew you weren't like them. And that difference, it didn't just make you stand out. It made you feel alone. There were moments when you gave your all to people and still felt like an outsider. Moments when you showed love, loyalty, and sincerity, but received confusion, distance, or even rejection in return. And that kind of pain, it stays with you. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, like a weight you carry without even realizing it. It shows up in the way you hesitate before opening up, the way you overthink interactions, The way you question your own worth, even when you've done nothing wrong, because being misunderstood, over and over again, it does something to your heart. It makes you wonder if something is wrong with you. Why can't they see what you mean? Why do they misinterpret your intentions? Why does your honesty get taken the wrong way? Why does your depth seem to push people away instead of bringing them closer? And the hardest part? You don't even want much. You don't need crowds. You don't need constant attention. You don't need validation from everyone around you. All you've ever really wanted is to be understood, to be accepted for who you truly are, without having to shrink, filter, or hide parts of yourself. But somehow, that's been the one thing that's always felt just out of reach. And over time, you started adapting. You became more reserved, more observant, more careful with your energy. You learned to sit in silence instead of forcing conversations. You learned to walk away instead of chasing connection. You learned to be alone even when it hurt. Because at some point, solitude felt safer than being misunderstood again. But even in that solitude, there were nights when it hit harder, when the silence felt too loud, when the absence of connection felt heavy, when you questioned if you were meant to walk this path alone forever. And in those moments, it didn't feel like strength. It felt like loss, like something was missing, like no matter how strong you tried to be, there was still a part of you that just wanted someone to get it. Someone to see you without misunderstanding you. Someone to recognize the depth in you without being intimidated by it. But instead, people came and went. Some left without explanation. Some changed without warning. Some stayed but never truly connected. And each time it left a mark, not always visible, but real. And here's the truth that changes everything. It was never because you were too much. It was because you were too real for spaces that weren't. You were offering depth in places that only understood surface. You were speaking truth in environments built on masks. You were giving genuine energy to people who weren't ready to receive it. And instead of meeting you where you were, they pulled away, not because you didn't deserve connection, but because they couldn't meet you at that level. And that realization, it hurts, but it also frees you, because it means all those moments of rejection, all those times you felt left out, overlooked, or misunderstood, they weren't random. They were part of something deeper, something intentional, something protective. Every time you didn't fit in, you were being redirected. Every time you felt isolated, you were being separated. Every time someone walked away, space was being created, not to punish you, but preserve you, because not every environment was meant for you. Not every connection was aligned with you. Not every person was capable of understanding what you carry. And if they had stayed, if they had fully entered your life without the capacity to respect, value, or comprehend who you are, the damage would have been far greater than the loneliness you felt. So, what felt like rejection wasn't absence, it was protection. Even when it didn't make sense, even when it hurt, even when you felt like you were the only one walking this path, you were being guided away from what couldn't hold you and towards something that can. But right now, you're still in that in-between space. That place where you've outgrown what was, but haven't fully stepped into what's coming. And that's why it feels so heavy. That's why the loneliness still lingers. That's why the questions are still there. Because you're not just being separated from people, you're being prepared for something different, something deeper, something aligned with who you truly are. But until you fully understand what you've been protected from, it will still feel like loss instead of purpose. What feels like rejection is actually protection. But from what? What if everything they're doing to you is part of God's plan? Not just the good moments, not just the blessings you can clearly see, but the confusion, the tension, the rejection, even the jealousy aimed at you for no reason you can explain. What if none of it is random? Because when you step back and look at your journey, there's a pattern. Every time you start growing, something rises against you. Every time you begin to feel aligned, focused, and at peace, suddenly people shift. Attitudes change, energy becomes heavy, and it feels like you're being pulled into battles you never asked for. But maybe you were never meant to avoid these moments. Maybe you were meant to be shaped by them. You see, God doesn't just build strength in comfort. He builds it in pressure, in resistance, in the unseen moments where you feel like everything is working against you, but something inside you refuses to break. That's not an accident. That's preparation. Because what you're carrying, it requires a different kind of strength. Not surface-level confidence, not temporary motivation, but something deeper, something rooted, something unshakable. And that kind of strength, it doesn't come from easy paths. It comes from being misunderstood and still choosing truth, from being rejected and still choosing love, from being surrounded by negativity and still protecting your inner peace. Every attack you faced, every moment of jealousy, every time someone tried to dim your light or question your worth, it's been refining you, not destroying you. Even when it felt personal, even when it hurt more than you expected, even when you sat there wondering, why is this happening to me? There was something being developed within you that couldn't be built any other way. Because think about it. If everyone supported you, you'd never learn to stand alone. If everyone understood you, you'd never learn to trust your own voice. If everyone celebrated you, you'd never learn to find your worth without validation. And if no one ever challenged you, you'd never discover how strong you truly are. So the very people who seem to be against you, they're playing a role. Not always intentionally, not always knowingly, but they are part of a process bigger than their actions, bigger than their emotions, bigger than their understanding, because God can use anything, even opposition, even jealousy, even people who don't see your value, to push you into growth you wouldn't have chosen on your own, to build endurance you didn't know you needed, to sharpen your awareness, your discernment, your strength. And the truth is, without that resistance, you wouldn't be who you are right now. You wouldn't have the depth, the awareness, the ability to read energy, the strength to walk away from what doesn't align. You wouldn't have that quiet confidence that comes from surviving things no one else fully understands. It didn't come from comfort. It came from pressure. And the more you grow, the more intense that pressure can feel, because higher levels require stronger foundations. That's why it feels like the attacks increase when you are about to step into something greater. That's why the jealousy becomes more visible when you are elevating. That's why people react more strongly when you're getting closer to your purpose. It's not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that something significant is happening, because not everyone is meant to walk the path you're on, and not everyone will understand the transformation you're going through. But that doesn't stop the process. It doesn't slow it down. If anything, it accelerates it, because every challenge forces you to go deeper. Every misunderstanding forces you to become clearer. Every moment of opposition forces you to become stronger. And slowly, without even realizing it, you begin to change. You become less reactive, less dependent on approval, less affected by opinions that once held power over you, and more aligned, more grounded, more aware of who you are and who you're becoming. That's not something people can take from you. That's something being built within you, piece by piece, through everything you've faced. So when you look at those who misunderstand you, who compete with you, who carry that quiet jealousy toward you, don't just see them as obstacles. See them as part of the process, because their actions are revealing your strength. Their reactions are exposing your growth. Their resistance is confirming your direction. And while they think they're affecting you on the surface, there's something much deeper happening within you. Something they can't see. Something they can't stop. Something they don't even realize they're contributing to. Because what God is building inside you doesn't depend on their approval. It's being formed through every moment they thought would break you. They think they're hurting you, but something powerful is being built inside you. You were never meant to be understood. You were meant to be chosen. And when you finally accept that, everything begins to make sense. All the confusion, all the rejection, all the moments where you questioned your place in this world, they weren't signs that you were lost. They were signs that you were never designed to follow the same path as everyone else. You were set apart. That's why your journey has felt different. That's why you've had to walk through things alone that others couldn't handle. That's why your heart has carried depths that most people never even reach, because your life was never meant to be ordinary. Every moment you felt misunderstood was separating you from environments that couldn't hold your truth. Every time you felt rejected was redirecting you away from people who couldn't recognize your value. Every time jealousy rose against you, it was revealing just how powerful your presence truly is. And now you're starting to see it. You're starting to understand that your pain wasn't punishment. It was preparation. Everything you've been through has been shaping you into someone stronger, wiser, and more aligned with your purpose. The loneliness taught you how to stand on your own. The rejection taught you how to value yourself without needing approval. The opposition taught you how to protect your energy and trust your path. Nothing was wasted. Not a single tear. Not a single moment of confusion. Not a single experience where you felt like giving up. It all built something inside you. something unbreakable. And that's why, even after everything, you're still here, still standing, still growing, still searching for truth. Because what's inside you was never meant to be destroyed. It was meant to rise. And now, you're stepping into a new understanding. You're no longer asking, why is this happening to me? You're beginning to ask, what is this preparing me for? That shift changes everything, because now you're not just surviving your journey. You're owning it. You're recognizing that your difference is your strength, that your sensitivity is not weakness. It's awareness, that your depth is not something to hide. It's something that sets you apart in a world that often stays on the surface. You're beginning to see yourself the way God sees you, chosen, not because you're perfect, not because you've never struggled, but because you were willing to keep going, even when it didn't make sense. And as you move forward, things will become clearer. The right people will come into your life. People who don't feel threatened by your light, but are aligned with it. The right opportunities will find you, ones that don't require you to shrink yourself to fit in. And most importantly, you'll find peace within yourself. A peace that doesn't depend on who understands you. A peace that doesn't break when others misunderstand you. A peace that comes from knowing exactly who you are and why you were set apart in the first place. So don't go back to shrinking yourself. Don't dim your light to make others comfortable. Don't question your worth just because others couldn't recognize it. Stand in who you are. Walk in your truth. And trust that everything you've been through is leading you exactly where you're meant to be. If this message spoke to your spirit, if you felt something shift inside you while listening to this, take a moment right now and comment Amen. Let it be your confirmation. And if you're ready to continue this journey, to keep growing, learning, and stepping deeper into your purpose, make sure you subscribe for more messages like this. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, and like this video so it can reach others who are walking this same path, silently searching for understanding, because you're not alone. You never were, and you never will be. They couldn't destroy you, because God set you apart for something greater.